Its tobacco prices by $16 a carton last week, a new opportunity was created for New Brunswick to Nova Scotia smuggling.
It's going to be difficult. The advantage is there for the people that are closer to the border.
RCMP hoped to temper the flow of cheap cigarettes into Nova Scotia by using the proceeds of crime laws that allow them to seize assets from smugglers.
This could be houses, bank accounts, vehicles, boats, anything at all.
So you want the smugglers to know you're ready to play hardball?
Very much so.
Store owners in Nova Scotia are worried about New Brunswick's cheaper tobacco. They feel a loss of tobacco revenue will force some small operators out of business.
Customers are going to continue to go to black market cigarettes. They know that they're not paying taxes on cigarettes, and I think that it satisfies somebody to know that they've cheated the government.
RCMP concedes stopping interprovincial smuggling of cigarettes will be very difficult. The law prevents them from randomly searching cars, and unless an informant or other source indicates which cars are carrying the tobacco, they will simply have to watch them drive by.
At this point in time, we do not believe that there's any authority for arbitrary searches or checkpoints, as you're suggesting, for the specific purpose of tobacco searches.
Mounties hope police informants will help them catch a few ambitious interprovincial smugglers, and that after they've been prosecuted, the lure of an easy buck will lose its luster. And the RCMP's excise unit in Nova Scotia has now swelled. It was once an 11-member unit. This week, it has 25 enforcement officers, and they say they mean business. Steve?
Okay, Ponce, what is the law regarding bringing tobacco across the border legally? I mean, how much can you bring?
Well, according to Sergeant McKenzie, one cigarette is one too many. You can't take any cigarettes from New Brunswick and legally bring them into this province. You have to notify tax authorities if you plan to do so.
Wow, laying down the letter of the law tonight. ATV's Ponce Jessen. Thank you, Ponce. Nova Scotia have been charged with possession of illegal smokes and booze. 29-year-old Sean Michael Saunier faces 2 charges, while 25-year-old Marlene Marie Ritchie faces 1. Both are from Yarmouth. Police seized about $9,000 worth of goods in a vehicle last Thursday night in the community there. The booze was American, the tobacco Canadian, destined for the U.S. The charges were laid after a week-long investigation following a tip from the police in Dartmouth, from where the goods are thought to have been shipped. Well, you know, most of the talk these days about the tobacco tax cuts has been about smuggling and cross-border shopping and complaints from adults about how unfair it is. But for some, the real issue here is the beginner. Cheaper prices make cigarettes more available to teenagers. ATV's Ron Shaw with that story tonight.
The people that don't smoke right now won't smoke because the prices are cheaper.
That's what this 17-year-old believes, but the experts don't agree. Vivian LeBlanc is a nurse and a member of the Canadian Lung Association.
How much do you smoke?
She also works for a chest clinic and sees the consequences of bad habits started in youth.
There's studies out proving that with the increased tax, there's less teenagers taking up the habit of cigarettes. And to lower them, I'm afraid we're going to see more teenagers take up the habit.
And all it takes to get the addiction is 5 cigarettes. The professionals say the evidence is all there. Cheaper cigarettes mean that more teenagers will smoke, and teenagers who smoke will smoke more. Those results are also confirmed by some less official sources.
We've had to turn down several. We've had a few of them come in and we've asked for identification, and they've gotten very upset saying that other stores don't require it.
I think it's going to get more teenagers to go and buy smokes. I think it's just going to make people smoke more, if anything. And they can raise, like, the age of smoking, but still, like, people just, like, get older people to go and buy them.
Education programs have had mixed results. Smoking is down among boys, up for girls. In Moncton, Ron Shaw, ATV News.
Another of the day's big stories from Ottawa just a few minutes ago, an NDP member of Parliament confirming he witnessed the doctor-assisted suicide of Sue Rodriguez. Sven Robinson appeared close to tears as he described her suicide Saturday night.
I comforted her in her bed. Sue remained serene and calm throughout and in total control. She faced her death with incredible courage and dignity. I held her I held her in my arms. She peacefully lapsed into unconsciousness and stopped breathing approximately 2 hours later.
Sven Robinson says Sue Rodriguez decided about a month ago that she would die this past Saturday. She had Lou Gehrig's disease. Robinson declined to name the doctor who assisted, and the MP says he has hired lawyer Clayton Ruby in case he needs legal help. Police have charged a 22-year-old man with second-degree murder following a shooting death on the weekend. Jason Wesley Sillaboy of Indian Brook was in court today facing charges of shooting a 20-year-old man from the Indian Island Reserve in New Brunswick. Police say they were called to a home on the Indian Brook Reserve early Sunday morning. The victim, Luke Fenton Brooks, was lying on the floor of that home. A local medical examiner pronounced him dead at the scene. The police are continuing an investigation. 31-year-old Paul Joseph Holnick has hired a lawyer, his fifth. This time it's Kevin Cody from Halifax. Holnick is charged with the April 1992 stabbing death of his estranged wife, Margaret Lorraine Mills. Justice Simon McDonald has already warned him that, lawyer or not, his trial is going ahead. Today the judge changed that just a little, saying this latest request for an adjournment did not represent a loss of court time. A veteran St. John City cop is going to jail for sexually exploiting a teenage girl. 35-year-old Raymond Green today received a 5-month sentence in jail. A judge saying Green abused his position of trust when he had a sexual encounter with a high school ride-along student. ATV's Mike Cameron standing by live in St. John tonight, where Constable Green has also lost his career over this, Mike.
Yes, Steve, we were told today that Constable Green resigned his post earlier this month. It basically saves the department the bother of going through a formal disciplinary hearing to have him dismissed. So one of the few questions left is whether or not this case has seriously damaged the reputation of the department.
I think there's always bad apples in every barrel, and we don't want to label everybody with the same brush.
The so-called bad apple was found guilty last month of using his trust and authority as a police officer for sexual purposes. He was acquitted on another charge of sexual assault.
In a statement he read to the court, Ray Green said his days as a police officer are over. He said he put his life on the line many times for the citizens of St. John. He told the court that over the past year, he's experienced feelings of anger, bitterness, embarrassment, and even thoughts of suicide.
Green went on to apologize to the police force and the girl. Before sentencing, Justice Robert Higgins said Green displayed signs of immaturity, and it was for Green to know better. Since the conviction, most police officers in St. John have met with Chief David Sherwood, who says he's reiterating the department policy on sex discrimination and making comments of a sexual nature.
I think that they will, in fact, be a little bit more discreet in their conversation and in their expressions towards the public and each other, in fact.
Sherwood says he hopes the public still has confidence in the department.
I think that's just on that singular officer himself, because the rest of the police can't do anything about it. We all have good and bad in us, really and truly. And we can make a mistake periodically, and unfortunately, this particular chap has.
Do you think the police department in general, though, is doing a good job?
Oh, I really, truly do. Yes, I think they're doing an excellent job.
Now, an internal investigation is continuing into the case. That's because Green suggested during his trial that senior members of the department counseled him to deny everything. And so Chief Sherwood expects a report on that on his desk within a couple of weeks. Steve?
Thank you, Mike. ATV's Mike Cameron. A Sydney police officer, meantime, has been demoted from corporal to constable and is being asked to resign. If he doesn't, he could be fired. John O'Rourke is being disciplined by the chief of police for a matter described as internal and not open to public review. Chief Richard Walsh won't comment on the reasons for the action, but a report on the officer will be reviewed privately by the Sydney City Police Commission.
Archie McCrory and Arnie Mamerka. Okay. As a result of receiving that report, I've called an in-camera meeting of the Police Commission, which will meet without officials, just the members of the commission, to discuss the report and to discuss the chief's recommendations.
A second cop, Mike McQueen, was recently demoted from sergeant to constable and suspended for 30 days. He's accused of withholding information from the Crown during a robbery investigation. McQueen has appealed to the Nova Scotia Police Commission. The Miller inquiry into sex abuse at the New Brunswick Training School continues in Fredericton. An inquiry lawyer read 2 statements from former inmates of the training school during the early 1980s today. The victims say that former schoolguard Carl Toft forced them into acts of masturbation and oral sex in the washrooms of bowling alleys and movie theaters. Another victim of the convicted child molester took the stand this afternoon. 32-year-old Réjean Picard says that Toft forced him into mutual masturbation while he was in a segregation cell when he was 15 years old. St. John gets a new mayor tonight. Tommy Higgins will take the mayor's chair officially at his first city council meeting. The mayor says he plans to pick up the loose ends left behind by former Mayor Elsie Wayne. He's been getting reacquainted with city officials and local politicians for the past few days. Higgins was deputy mayor for 5 years back in the mid-1970s. They're back to work today at IMP Aerospace in Amherst. More than 100 workers returned to the job this morning, ending a long and often bitter 5-week strike. Some of those workers say they were reluctant to return because they had sacrificed too much for too little. While the company made some concessions, the workers had to take a 10% pay cut. And the striking workers at Mount A handed out Valentines to the students today as the non-teaching employees neared their second week on the picket line. The union president says the Valentines were meant to show appreciation for support shown by the students. Lots more tonight on your ATV Evening News, followed by more Olympic coverage from Lillehammer at 6:40. But in the meantime, our tempers flaring on our snow-packed streets. And next, the 500-channel universe.
Canadians have an insatiable appetite for news, and most importantly, they want Canadian news.
This is a very important public hearing for Canada because in a few years, technology should allow each of us to have hundreds of new channels to choose from.
Your call for a specialty service.
McCain has tasty pizza snack. They call it Pizza Pocket. McCain! Pizza Pocket! The great pizza taste will keep you coming back. McCain! Pizza Pocket!
Pizza perfection in a crust that's baked, not fried. So there's no leaks, no mess. Just taste. All taste and nothing but
McCain! Pizza Pocket!
No leaks, no mess. Just pizza perfection.
Spring session of the NB legislature gets down to business tomorrow. Premier Frank McKenna says he hopes to have a productive session and says he will be continuing much along the same lines as over the past 6 years or so.
A trial date has been set, then I shall defer.
It's our hope that we can deal with our budget situation while maintaining a strong activist job-creating agenda and also enhance some carefully targeted social programs.
McKenna says the provincial budget will be announced later in the month. It will be the earliest budget since back in the 1960s. Hearings which could reshape your TV set are underway today in Hull, Quebec. The Canadian Radio, Television, Telecommunications Commission is trying to decide which, if any, of 50 new services on your TV will go ahead. CTV's Craig Oliver with more on that.
Almost everybody who's anybody in the Canadian music, entertainment, and television industry wants CRTC permission for a specialty channel. 48 companies want to start new channels, and the Commission will probably approve only 6 of them.
This is a very important public hearing for Canada because in a few years, technology should allow each of us to have hundreds of new channels to choose from.
The first application to come before the one-month hearing was from prima ballerina Veronica Tennant, backing an arts channel called Festival.
With your call for specialty service applications, you've given us the chance to truly strengthen Canada's ability to lead in culture and communications.
Other applications for new television channels cover everything from sports to country music to Canadian drama. The CTV network is applying for a headline news service to compete with American news channels.
Canadians have an insatiable appetite for news, and most importantly, they want Canadian news. We think that CTV's headline service will repatriate viewers that are currently watching CNN headline or CNN main service.
The Canadian cable industry says more Canadian services are needed to compete with the invasion of U.S.-based direct broadcast satellites, popularly known as Death Star.
We're basically a theater, right? And what we're saying is we need the product to sell seats in that theater. And that's what we hope to see come out of this is more good product to get people into our theater.
Craig Oliver, CTV News, Ottawa.
An inquiry into tainted blood products that left more than 1,000 Canadians HIV positive has opened hearings in Toronto today. Pauline Chan with that story.
The heart-shaped sculpture featured pictures and mementos of 13-year-old Sam, a hemophiliac who died after contracting HIV through contaminated blood. More than 1,000 Canadians were infected by tainted blood in the early 1980s before heat treatments to kill the virus became mandatory for Canada's blood supplies. Those families will now have a chance to tell their stories to a federal commission headed by Justice Horace Creever and make recommendations to prevent such tragedies in the future.
It is not and it will not be a witch hunt. It is not concerned with criminal or civil liability. I shall make findings of fact. It will be for others not for the Commission to decide what actions, if any, are warranted by those findings.
Rod Cohen hopes this tribute to his stepson will help the judge put a human face to the problem.
There's no expectation or grand illusion that this is going to, you know, singularly make a decision for him. What it is going to do strictly is give him a physical picture of what happened.
Other parties to be granted standing at the cross-country hearings include the provinces, the Canadian Aid Society, and the Canadian Red Cross. The Commission expects to hear from hundreds of witnesses over the next few months. Justice Cleaver is supposed to submit a final report by the end of this year, but has said he may request an extension of up to a year. Pauline Chan reporting in Toronto.
Elsewhere on the planet today, the threat of NATO airstrikes on Serbian positions around Sarajevo has apparently succeeded in quelling the fighting there. A few more of the Serbs' heavy artillery guns were put under UN control today, bringing the total number to about 24 of the 500 Serb guns thought to be surrounding the city. Observers say there were no casualties this weekend in Sarajevo, making it the quietest stretch in nearly 2 years of civil war. French fishermen continue their protest of cheap imports. They blocked 4 Mediterranean ports today and dumped loads of fish on the roads, as you can see here. These fishermen voted last week to continue their 2-week-old strike. Close call in Savannah, Georgia, where this U.S. Air jet was grounded in Savannah when an engine caught fire shortly before takeoff. 81 people on board and 5 crew members were evacuated from the Charlotte, North Carolina-bound DC-9. A spokesman for the airline says aircraft fire extinguishers quickly put out the fire, but people were taken off the plane as a precaution. He says 4 people were injured during the evacuation. They're taking it to the streets and festivities underway at Carnival, the traditional celebration that precedes the Christian observance of Lent. This is in Italy. Similar celebrations are going on in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and in New Orleans, Louisiana. The revelry traditionally culminates tomorrow and ends on Ash Wednesday, which marks the beginning of Lent. There's Tanya Harding getting flowers from her fans on this Valentine's Day. She held her last public practice today before heading to Lillehammer, Norway tomorrow. As you can see there, Tanya had a T-shirt. Actually, you can't quite read it. Let me tell you, it says, "Don't dream it, be it." She remains under criminal investigation in Oregon over the attack on Nancy Kerrigan, continues to maintain she is innocent. And ATV's Olympic coverage resumes at 6:40 tonight, right after the newscast. But in the meantime, the secret of long-lasting love on Valentine's Day, Richard's forecast, and next, a run-in with a plow.
I just have to go through the court system now and try to clear it up.
Well, Maritimers can be excused for feeling Olympic this past weekend. Upwards of 40 centimeters of snow fell in some parts of the region. You know, if snow shoveling or plowing were events at Lillehammer, most of us would be in medal contention. Schools in some areas were closed today because of poor road conditions. And as this white winter continues, some are getting philosophical.
Accept it for what it is. Some people shy away and go to warmer climes, but nah, I'll stay here.
And on the optimistic side, with Valentine's Day almost over, the countdown is underway to the first day of spring. A private snowplow operator has been charged after an incident in the north end of Halifax on the weekend. A man sustained minor injuries when he was allegedly struck by a mini plow. ATV's John Waterman is joining us now live to tell us a little bit more about what seemed like testy times on the snowpacked roads, John.
Well, they certainly seem that way, Steve. This case seems rather strange, but Halifax police are treating it very seriously. In fact, they've laid 2 charges against the operator of the small plow.
Kevin Brown of Lower Sackville was using his Bobcat plow Sunday night, clearing snow from this parking lot.
It's alleged that the Bobcat struck the back of a small truck. After words were spoken by the Bobcat operator and the driver of the truck, it's also alleged that the Bobcat struck the driver of the truck.
After talking with witnesses, police charged Brown with assault causing bodily harm and property damage. He ended up spending the night in jail until this morning's court arraignment.
And I have nobody as a witness for my side. And I just have to go through the court system now and try to clear it up.
When it comes to plowing sidewalks or parking lots this time of year, most operators will tell you that patience is a real asset.
Grady Lett has been plowing sidewalks for the city of Halifax for 17 years.
You have to be unaware of everything and everyone around you at all times. And sometimes it can take a toll on you guys, you know, when you're working all night or working all day and then working all night.
And Steve, certainly, with all the snow, some of it here in the background that you may be able to see, snowplow operators are working long hours and likely many more before we finally get into spring. Now, as for Kevin Brown, he's expected to return to court on the 3rd of March, when he will be in there for election and plea on those charges. And by the way, police say that the driver of the truck didn't require any medical treatment for his injuries. Steve?
Okay, John. Well, you know, if misery loves company, we've got lots. I want to show you some pictures of the brutal winter weather that is beating up the southeastern United States over the weekend. We now have about 250,000 people in the state of Tennessee without electricity after freezing rain brought down trees and power lines. What a mess down there. And some of these people may have to wait until Thursday before they can cook in the electric stove or plug in the fridge again. Ice also caused problems in Mississippi, where tree limbs fell, snapping power lines. Outages left homes in Virginia cold and dark. Some cities are under curfews because of power failures that have left them without street lights or alarm systems. And it isn't just North America. This is Tokyo, Japan. They're digging out after weekend storms left a heavy cover of snow. Forecasters expect continued cloudy weather in the Japanese capital, with some clearing expected by tomorrow. Misery loves company. Misery doesn't love any more misery. We'll check with Richard on that coming up next. Olympic coverage resumes here in about 10 minutes. Right now it's time for the weather, and I understand Newfoundland is getting a lot of the ugly weather that Moncton and parts of Pictou County, Cape Breton, many parts of the Maritimes saw on the weekend, right?
You're absolutely right, Steve, and of course the disturbances that we get a chance to move to the east, and what's happened is it's moved following the jet stream right into the Newfoundland-Labrador area. We have blizzard warnings in effect for much of the eastern sections of the map, and that includes Newfoundland and the southern tip of Labrador. For them, it's not very good at all. They're looking at what we got and in spades because the disturbance has developed even further. 20 and 40%. As far as the weather goes for tonight, it will be windy. It will be cold. Look out for the scattered snow flurries for tomorrow. Some sunshine, the wind continues, and milder temperatures on the way, Steve.
All right, thank you, Richard. And from that long-lasting winter to the secret of long-lasting love, coming up next.
Knew that was Valentine's Day because I had to come home quick because the army was getting me.
Yes, it is the day to shower someone you love with something special that brings out the best in all of us, doesn't it? Well, you know, for many, it's a day to reflect on pleasant memories of days gone by and also to wish for a future filled with more of the same romantic feelings. A couple in Acadéville, New Brunswick has cause to celebrate for a special reason today. 50 years ago, they got married. And as ATV's Peter Ryan tells us now, they're hoping for many, many more years together.
You can bet Alma and Albin Bordage have had plenty of cups of tea together over their 50 years. They were married in St. John back in 1944, but Albin didn't know it was Valentine's Day. Alma and Albin are treating themselves. They're going out to dinner.
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary, Mom. We'll second that. Happy anniversary. In Acadiaville, Peter Ryan, ATV News.
Yes, and happy Valentine's Day, too. All right, coming up tomorrow night here on the ATV Evening News, New Brunswick now has some of the cheapest cigarette prices in Canada, but are they cheap enough? Some store owners in the picture province say the price will have to drop even further if they hope to survive. So, how low can they go? We find out tomorrow night here on the ATV Evening News at 6 o'clock. That is our news for now. For my colleagues on both sides of our cameras, I'm Steve Murphy. ATV's coverage of the 1994 Winter Olympic Games continues now with my colleague Paul Meunier in the ATV Olympic Feed Center. Paul?
Thank you, Steve. And as you mentioned, we'll be going back to Lilyhammer in just a moment. We have primetime coverage as well at 9 o'clock tonight, and you should see some bobsled action on that. Canada's two-man bobsled with Dave McEachran of PEI aboard, finishing 5th. In practice today, they are touted to be gold medal favorites at the Lilyhammer Games. Here is our ATV Olympic moment today. Unfortunately, it is a sad one. You're looking at Dan Jansen in the inside track. He is the brave American speed skater who in 1988 in Calgary competed just hours after his sister died. Today, as you'll see, a slight bobble. It cost him the race. He finished 8th overall. That was Dan Jansen today. Should be an exciting day tomorrow. Our coverage begins at 7:30 and through the afternoon, and now we'll return you to Lilyhammer.
Hello, guys. Five nothing. The Russians shut out for the very first time in Olympic history to Finland. One of the major upsets, the major upset so far in the Olympic hockey tournament. Haken Hall, people filing out, and someone who filed out very quickly was one Victor Tikhonov. Don Chevrier, Greg Millen, a stunning defeat tonight.
Stunning indeed, and you gave the Finns a chance to win going in, but not to devastate, and certainly not to shut out the Russians as they did tonight. They got solid...